Peace be with you. Today's video is about the whole concept of halal and haram in Islam. The reason why I wanted to talk about this because I come from a non-Arabic culture and we don't speak Arabic, but we use this terminology. We use halal and haram when talking about things, and I don't think most people who don't speak Arabic, maybe even people who do speak Arabic, understand this. So so I wanted to address this because people don't understand this, and I think a lot of time language serves as a barrier to some people to understand Islam properly. So I wanted to kind of talk about this, and the easiest way to talk about these concepts is when we're talking about food. So God makes food halal and makes food haram, and a lot of people from my community, I come from originally, I am from Bosnia, and a lot of people in my community, they eat any food, right? And I've even seen imams, which is religious leaders like priests, eat food that is not allowed for us to eat. So these are the people who are supposed to be setting an example for us, and when they set this kind of an example, then they lead people astray completely. And I think this is a very important topic to talk about because of that reason. So halal means lawful and haram means unlawful. That's all there is to it. So when we're talking about food and we're saying, do you eat halal food? All you're really asking is, hey, do you eat lawful food? And if you don't eat food that's halal, then you're just eating food that is not lawful. You're breaking the law of God, and it's up to you. I personally don't care what goes into people's stomachs, but I do care what people know, and this is why I make these. This is why I make these videos, and because knowledge is very important. I think people should have enough information to make educated decisions about any aspect of their lives. And if people claim to be Muslims, then they need to know this. So the first thing is that people just don't eat food. People who call themselves Muslims, they just don't eat food halal. They don't care. That's halal, so they don't care. They'll eat any food, and that part I can't fix. If people don't care, they don't care. But if you call yourself a Muslim and you don't care what God allowed and what God forbade, then then you're not really a Muslim. You're not really doing anything, because the very meaning of the word Muslim itself, now that we're talking about language, means one who submits to God, and submission implies obedience. So if you're not obeying God, if you are doing what's forbidden, then you're not really submitting to God, and just linguistically, you don't fit the definition of a Muslim. You fit the definition of a munafiq much more, which is a hypocrite, a person who claims to be a Muslim but does not do what God commanded. So this is a very bad thing to be, because this is the most despised category of people by God. God hates these people and reserves the lowest part of hell for them. So you don't want to be this person. So going back to the topic of food, so what does God say about this? So in the Quran, God does say, so this is in the second chapter, verse 168, God says, O people, eat the lawful and good. So eat the halal and good, which is taiban. And I'm not pronouncing that right because I don't speak Arabic like that. But so God says, O people, eat the halal, the lawful, and the good things out of what is in the earth, and do not follow the footsteps of the devil. Surely he is your open enemy. So what is following the footsteps of the devil? Well, following the footsteps of the devil is disobeying God. It's really that simple. The devil is the one who disobeys God, and he hates us and wants us to do the same thing, because disobedience to God carries the same punishment, whether for the devil, the shaitan, or for us, is the same thing. We're going to hell. So God tells us, don't do that. In 588, so chapter 5, verse 88, God says, and eat of the halal, of the lawful, eat of the lawful and good that God has given you, and be careful of your duty to God. That word. There's a word in the Quran that says muttaqin, and these are the people who are careful of their duty to God. So God says, be careful of your duty to God in whom you believe. And then in 16th chapter, verse 144, God says, therefore eat of what God has given you, lawful and good, so halal, and give thanks for God's favor if Him you serve. So God tells us several times, hey, you eat of the lawful food, of the halal food. God doesn't say eat haram food. So if you are a Muslim, you have to understand this. And then, so the next question is, what is lawful? What is halal? And this depends on how the animal is slaughtered, right? So God says, so on a very basic level, if people do not slaughter in the name of God, the food is not lawful. Okay, so most butcheries in America do not say in the name of God, you know, or we say Bismillah when they slaughter the animal, right? So God says in the Quran, and this is in chapter 6, verse 121, and do not eat that on which God's name has not been mentioned, and that is most surely a transgression. The Arabic word there is lafsikun, and I'm not pronouncing it right, but essentially means to commit disobedience, to transgress, to go astray. So if the animal did not have the name of God pronounced on it, it is a transgression. And then God says, and most surely the devils suggest to their friends, to their followers, which could be people, that they should argue with you, and if you obey them, then most surely you will be idolaters. So if the name of God is not pronounced on the food, it is not lawful, and it's really simple to see it. So generally, any food from like fast food, McDonald's or whatever, none of them use meat that is lawful, because none of them care about that, and so that's all there is to it, they don't pronounce the name of God when they kill the animal. So it is not lawful to eat. It's plain and simple. And unfortunately I've heard that some people who I considered much smarter than myself, much more knowledgeable about Islam, don't care about this like this, and that's sad. So I decided to make this video about it. So what else is haram? So now a little bit more in detail. So in the 5th chapter, verse 3, God says, forbidden, haram, for you is that which dies of itself, and blood, and flesh of swine, and that on which any name other than God has been invoked, and the strangled animal, and that beaten to death, and that killed by a fall, and that killed by being smitten by the horn, and that which wild beasts have eaten, except what you slaughter, and that what is sacrificed on stones set up, which is idolatry, and that you divide by arrows, which is essentially raffling, by chance, who gets the good part of the meat by chance. That is a transgression, so that is a disobedience. This day, those who disbelieve have the spirit of your religion, so do not fear them, but fear me. This day I have perfected for you your religion, and completed my favor on you, and chosen for you submission, Islam, as a religion. But whoever is compelled by hunger, not inclining willfully to sin, then surely God is forgiving and merciful. So it gives all these details, and most animals in America are killed with a violent blow. We call it stunning, but it's nothing merciful about it. I don't know if you ever got hit real hard in the head, but it hurts. It doesn't necessarily kill you. Not all of that stunning kills an animal. It can give it seizures. The animal is in a state of panic, and then they cut the throat. They hamstring the animal, and then they cut the throat, which is very brutal thing. They kill these animals in a state of panic, which is not the right thing to do. And I'm not saying that even the people who slaughter halal, sometimes they don't do it right either. They let the animal see the knife. They kill the animal while the animal is in a state of panic. That's not the right thing to do. But I'm just saying that exists too. I'm acknowledging it, but they shouldn't be doing it. But what people do, industrial slaughter, it's not halal, especially since they hit it with a violent blow. So that makes it. Not only do they not pronounce the name of God on it, but they also hit it with a violent blow. So it's a double whammy. So two things that I wanted to mention now. There's this big block right now of things, and a part of it is pork, right? So in my society, Muslims are not going to eat pork, right? But they will eat all this other stuff, and they don't see a problem with it. Well, guess what? These people don't eat pork for religious reasons. They don't eat it because it's unhealthy. They don't eat it because they don't like it. They don't eat it whatever. They don't eat it because somebody told them it is haram. But all these other things are haram. So if you're just not eating pork, but you're eating food that's haram, that's forbidden, things that the name of God has not been pronounced upon, or blood, or things that have been killed by a violent blow, it's all the same thing. It is exactly the same thing as pork. If you're going to eat food that is not halal, you might as well go get some pepperoni on your pizza. You might go get a pork steak. It doesn't matter. You're doing the same thing. Just not eating pork is not enough. And I don't know how that got into religion, but it did. And it's just ridiculous, because in the same verse that pork is mentioned, all these other things are mentioned. So they're all haram. In any case, in this verse, also it says, but whoever is compelled by hunger, not inclining willfully to sin, then surely God is forgiving and merciful. So the other argument I hear people make is that because we don't have options, that the food is halal. We can eat, but we're not starving. We're not starving. When I first realized this, when I first became a Muslim, and I was an atheist that used to eat pork pizza during Ramadan. Okay, so I miss food. I want to go to Applebee's and eat a steak. I miss all of this, right? But I'm not starving. And when I found this out, I submitted to God and I started to eat vegetable sandwiches and so on. And you get used to it. You get used to it. So if you're saying, oh, but God allows it because we got nothing else, we don't have halal options, guess what? You got vegetables. You have vegetables, and you can get used to it. I got used to it until, thank God, options became available. So that we're not starving. We're not starving, and if you obey God, even if you don't have halal meat to eat, guess what? You're going to live a much healthier life if you are on a vegetarian diet. If you are starving, if you are truly starving, and you will know if you are truly starving, and God says you can eat whatever you want. You can eat pork, you can eat whatever. But you have to be honest with yourself. And again, like I said, I don't care what you do. What I care is what you know. So this is what it says, and that's it. Another topic, another objection that people make is that, God says in the Quran that we can eat the food of the people of the book, of the Christians and the Jews. Right? And this is in chapter 5, verse 5. God says, this day all good things are allowed to you, and the food of those who have been given the book is lawful to you, and your food is lawful to them. And then it goes on some other things that are lawful. But what people don't understand is, guess what? The Christians in America, they eat pork. So why are you not eating pork if that is your argument? You can eat pork then. To truly understand this, what is allowed from the people of the book, one has to understand the Bible. One has to really study the Christianity and Judaism. And without going into too much depth in it, I'm going to quote one verse from the Bible that should impart some understanding. So basically, when the Messiah, Jesus, he tells his disciples, teachers of the law and Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. So be careful to do whatever they tell you to do, but do not do as they do, for they do not practice what they preach. So what he's saying to people, hey, the rabbis, they know what they're talking about because they're knowledgeable in the Torah. So do what they tell you to do because they know what they're talking about. But do not do as they do because they're hypocrites. They don't practice any of it, right? So a rabbi would never tell you not to eat kosher food. So when this says the food of those who have been given the book before you, it's talking about the book is lawful to you. It means kosher food, only kosher food. You cannot eat anything else. And again, if you think then that, any food like a food of the people here in the U.S. is lawful to you because they call themselves Christians, no, that is haram food for you because, again, then eat pork. You have no problems eating pork. End of story. And that's it. These are the some of the things that God says in the Quran about food that is halal. And this is the concept of lawful and unlawful, and we should not be doing things that God forbade if we are Muslims. And food is one of them. Food is really easy, right? God forbids other things that are much harder to implement in our life than food. If you cannot even get through food, then you will never, ever, ever, ever get the other things more, done. Like being good to your parents and being truthful and honest and not being greedy and being charitable, all that is much, much more harder than eating, right? And last thing I wanted to mention, because this video is getting too long, God says in the Quran, verse 16, in chapter 16, verse 116, and for what your tongues describe, do not utter a lie, saying this is lawful and this is unlawful, in order to forge a lie against God. Surely those who forge the lie against God will not prosper. And that warning is actually for these imams that are making these foods that are unlawful, making them lawful. you should be very careful about that. If you are in that position, do not do that. You should not do that. This is a warning to God. And God says this warning several times. In chapter 10, verse 59, God says, say, and this is Prophet Muhammad saying this, say, tell me what God has sent down of you of sustenance. Then you make a part of it unlawful and a part of it lawful. Say, has God commanded you, or do you forge a lie against God? So did God tell you that you can eat all this stuff that's not slaughtered correctly, that does not have the name of God pronounced upon it, or did somebody else tell you? Uh, and that's it. That's all I wanted to say. So this is about food, but the concept itself is greater. It's the concept of lawful and unlawful that Muslims finally need to start understanding, because it is easiest to describe about well when describing food, but it applies to many other things. So that's all.